Hey guys, this is Jason Morris, Real Estate Agents That Really Work. And, it come to my attention over the last week or two. One thing that we're not, we don't work on enough as real estate agents, especially listing agents, is skill development. And a lot of us, that's where we're lacking. I think that's even myself, there's lots of little areas I can improve. And just do better on it. I need to be working on like constantly, and because even if you get really really good at taking listings, and then you slow down for a little while, you take some time off, you get lazy, you get complacent. And here's the thing, all sellers want a highly skilled listing agent. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing in this industry as any industry. If you're on a commercial flight and you're going through a storm, you want a highly skilled pilot. If you have to have brain surgery, you want a highly skilled surgeon. If you have to hire an attorney for a legal issue, you want a highly skilled attorney. Sellers want a highly skilled listing agent. You know, and and that's just something that I think all of us need to be working on is their skill sets. And I want to go down through a list of skills that you need to be working on and that you need to be perfecting and trying to do better stuff. The listing agent going out there, uh, a lot of agents haven't figured this out yet, but going out there and being the listing agent, if you're the listing agent, it's like you're the employer. You're the person that's in control of your business, your market, the things around you. You are the employer. The buyer's agent, a lot of times, is just the employee. He's going out here and really working for all these listing agents, showing property. If there's no listings out there for the buyer's agent to show, then they're out of a job. The listing agent, basically, they employ all these buyer's agents. And that's one way to kind of start looking at your market. But, typically the listing agents, in most cases, are getting paid more than the buyer's agents. And if you just want to make more money and you want to do better in the real estate industry, all you have to do is just be a better listing agent. If you're going to work and you're going to go to work every day, why not be in a position to control your schedule, control your life, and control your income? So thinking about it, these are some of the skills that we need to start working on and better perfecting. You know, um, One of them is prospecting. Finding sellers. This is something everybody talks about finding sellers all the time. You know, going out there calling expireds, calling for sale by owners, calling withdrawals, calling, whether it's probate leads or whatever it may be, using Red X and calling geo leads and different things like that for rent by owners. You know, and that's a great skill to have to be able to find sellers. But the next skill you need is you need lead follow up. You need to learn how to be a very, very effective agent. I was reading, and I've read this over and over a bunch of different places. Over 80% of sales come from follow up, and 80% over 80% of sales come from following up like 10, 12, 14 times or more. When I get a lead that's in my area, that's a for sale by owner or expired, that's in my area in the price range that I want to be in, stuff like that, I automatically know in my mind that I'm gonna have to follow up 10 or 12 times with this seller to get them to list with me. And that's why, guys, hey, if you haven't tried it yet, try my follow up app. I'm giving a 30-day free trial away. It's at Jason Morris Follow Up Master. Click on the Android or click on the iPhone logo and download the app and create you an account and start using it. I've been using it for a couple of months. I've been using it since the first beta version come out, and it has made me it's made me where I do not forget a lead. Number three, number three skill set that you need to be working on is pre-qualifying your appointments. And now what this means, I'm not talking about overqualifying. I'm talking about asking questions and listening to their answers, and deciding, is this a situation where they just want to sell, or is this a situation where they have to sell? And what I mean by that is, if they're in a situation where they have to sell, then that is something like, hey, my job is transferring me. hey, I lost my job, I can't afford the place. Some reason where they have to sell the property. You know, and I mean that reason could be a lot of things. Hey, they're a retired landlord, they're evicting their fourth tenant in a row. I've told you guys, if you listen to other recordings, I've told you, hey, the craziest thing is that if you follow up with these four rent my owners long enough, that all of them are one eviction or one late payment behind, from from signing a listing agreement. So, yeah, the number four skill that we need to be working on and improving is our pricing strategy. Now, I've got another video that's part of my for sale by owner master series that goes into my active pricing strategy and how I'm pricing properties in today's market and how I'm pricing these properties so that they're priced competitively, because I'm using an active pricing strategy. Being able to explain your pricing strategy is unbelievable, and that's really powerful because a lot of agents are showing up at listing presentations and they're kind of sitting there and they're kind of beating around the bush. Oh, I think it's worth 99,000 because one sold in 2015 and it sold for about 99,000, and there's nothing else that sold there. You're going, well, man, you mean there's nothing in the area around it? There's nothing comparable in 2 miles. There's nothing comparable in 3 miles. You know, Find a strategy that you can easily explain. Use my strategy that you can easily explain and those price role play pricing and explaining the whole pricing script. Your listing presentation. You need to go in the house. Your listing presentation needs to be canned. And I've heard a lot of agents say, well, I don't like to use canned listing presentations. Well, if your canned listing presentation isn't working, you need to look at what you're putting in the can. You need to be doing the same thing over and over again. And you need to develop a routine and you need to develop a habit. How are you going to the door? How are you talking to them when you get in the door? Because that listing presentation is really, really powerful if you're doing the same thing over and over again. If you're doing the same thing over and over again, you can figure out what your problem is a whole lot easier than if you're just walking in the door and just doing whatever you want to. If you're in your presentation and you're realizing that at a certain point everything's kind of going sideways and you're losing the people, then you can go back and you can improve that section. You can speed up your listing presentation. If you feel like you're going too fast and you're losing listings because of it, you can slow it down. But if you're doing the same thing over and over again in your listing presentation in that system, you can figure out what your problem is. And that's why I do everything scripted. And that's why I tell you guys to do everything needs to be scripted. And your listing presentation, I'm not one for sitting there in the in front of a full-length mirror and role playing it over and over again, because your listing presentation, or at least mine, if you listen to it in that For Sale by Owner Master series and how I do it, I have a whole listing system, a whole sales system. But my presentation, as far as how I go in the door, how I look around the property, how I talk about things as if we're already working together. One thing you probably should do is find a local agent in your market. I mean, you can do it by yourself. It works better if you got another person. You guys listen to that listing presentation strategy and then go through and actually role play that together. Actually, find an open house, preview it, spend 20 minutes there, or, role playing that listing presentation together and just going through it a couple of times. Objection handling, overcoming, and this is why you guys should be using scripts and practicing them, role playing them, making calls. The best practice is actually calling and talking to sellers, then going back and discussing with other agents, posting those objections in my group, Real Estate Agents That Really Work, posting those objections in the group, and let's figure out those objections together. If you need some help, figure out how other agents are overcoming those objections, especially the ones you're getting over and over again, because the thing is, there's no new objections. Sometimes there's new conditions. If something's going on in your city, your town, and your market, if you're in Flint, Michigan, and the water's bad, that's probably a serious objection. But there's a way that you can overcome that. There's somebody in your market that's overcoming whatever the objection is or the condition is. But objection handling is a skill set that you guys need to be working on and trying to improve over and over and over again and practicing those objections over and over and over again. Okay, the next thing we've got is negotiating the contract. Okay, you need to get better at negotiating the contract and be thinking about how can we make this work? I mean, every time I get a contract or an offer, the first thing I'm thinking about is even if it's something that's stupid, I'm looking at it and I'm going, how can I make this work with my seller? That's my internal dialogue. How can I make this work with my seller? We're $2,000 apart. How can we make that work? You know, you need to get better at negotiating the contract and looking for little angles that you can maybe apply to work the buyer's agent or the or your seller. Sometimes you have to you're representing the seller, but you have to know what how to negotiate not only with the other agent, but how to negotiate with your seller and make both parties come together and meet, everybody meet in the middle. Because that's the thing. That's what your job is. Your job isn't to get the highest possible price on the market. Your job is to get an acceptable price for your seller. A lot of agents don't really understand that. And a lot of agents forget that. Your job is to sell the house. Yeah, you'd like to get them the highest price possible, because the more money they make, the more money you're going to make. But your job, when you really get down to it, is to get an acceptable offer, an acceptable contract for your seller at a if you're representing the sellers, to get an acceptable price for your seller. If you're representing the buyers, to get an acceptable price for your buyer. It's not to get the best price possible for both parties, because here's the deal. The buyer wants to buy the house cheap as they can. The seller wants to sell the house for as much money they can. I'm not saying that everybody always gets the price they want, because they don't. It's just to come up with an acceptable solution and get an acceptable price for the seller, an acceptable contract. They might want $125,000, but they might find that $122,000 is acceptable. So you need to get really good at negotiating those contracts. And if you're having a problem, message me, post it in the group, and I'll try to help you out with it. But as a listing agent, now here's two skills that are different between listing agents and buyer's agents. And this was just me thinking about this. Is selling agents, listing agents. The thing that we need to get good at, we need to constantly work on. And if you've been a buyer's agent and you've been working with buyers constantly, this is where the two roles differ. And sometimes it's hard for a listing agent to be a buyer's agent. And sometimes it's really hard for a buyer's agent to switch and become a listing agent. Because a listing agent, what you need to do, and it's another reason why a lot of teams have, listing agents and buyer's agents, they don't really have one agent that does everything. But listing agents, what you need to do is you need to get really, really good at asking questions. Things like, oh, okay, well, how soon do you have to sell? Why do you have to sell? What price would you sell for? If I could get you X price, would you go ahead and put it on the market today? A listing agent, you have to get really good at asking questions. A buyer's agent, you have to get really good at talking to people. So you have to get really good at, wow, this room is great. The ceilings are high. It's got 18-foot ceilings. Buyer's agents typically talk. They talk about all the features of the house. They talk about all the good things in the house, all the good qualities, all the selling points, things like that, where the listing agent is you're asking questions about seller motivation. So that's just one of the thoughts I've had here. So guys, if you're wanting to become a highly skilled listing agent, you need to work on your skills. You need to work on prospecting. You need to work on your lead follow-up. You need to work on your pre-qualifying. You need to work on your pricing. You need to work on your listing presentation, your objection handling, negotiating the contract. You need to start working on all those 7 items. And over the next couple of weeks, we're gonna talk more about those 7 items and how you can do more of them. I mean, I personally I think that the number one skill set you need to work on and get really good at and get really, really diligent in doing, schedule time if you have to, is your lead follow up. I don't think there's another skill. I mean, I think that is number one behind actually calling and prospecting to find the client. I think lead follow up is the number one thing you can work on. So guys, hey, if you want to try out my follow up app, it's at jasonmorrisfollowupmaster.com. Try it out. Let me know what you think. I'm updating it based on user interaction and user feedback. And if you're looking for lead sources, I use Redx. If you call them and give them my name, they'll waive the $150 setup fee. I also use ZBuyer quite a bit. But anyway, guys, I will talk to you soon.